session. Thanks so much for joining us today on this Meet Businesswomen Masterclass on mental resilience. We've got a great session lined up with Soraya today, like I said, and today's session is open to members of Meet Businesswomen, but it's also open to non-members as well. So if you're brand new with us today, welcome. We really hope you enjoy the session. And as always, before we get started, I'd just like to say a big thank you to our strategic members. With their support with Meet Businesswomen, we couldn't do what we do without them and the work that they do alongside us. So thank you very much to those strategic members. And I'll just take a quick moment to remind you what else is included in your Meet Businesswomen membership. This isn't an extensive list, so do make sure you sign up to our newsletters and add us to your safe senders as well, so that you can get all of our twice monthly updates and you can keep yourself in the loop with sort of upcoming and new content and events. So we've got new blogs coming out all the time, including members Q&As, and they're all available when you log into your members portal. Whilst we're watching live today, you can go back and watch all of our previous masterclasses on that members portal as well. We've also started recording those masterclasses as podcasts, so you can listen to them on the go if you don't quite have an hour to carve out of your day. You can pop them on in the car, or when you're kind of doing other things, and listen back to some of our most popular masterclasses as well. And being a member also means that you've got access to our global mentoring matching programme. Anyone can become a mentor or a mentee as long as you're a member of Meet Businesswomen. There's so many benefits to getting involved, and I think the feedback that we get from our mentees and mentors is excellent, and we know that it's really essential for career growth and personal development. So if you've not already explored that, please do have a look at that, and again, that's on your members portal when you log in. And if you're brand new with us today and you want to join as a member, you can find all the information on our website. So last slide from me, what's coming up in the Meet Businesswomen calendar. So on the 15th of August, we've got a members masterclass on PR in a crisis, top tips and media training with the fabulous Hannah Lloyd at Pinstone. This was a really good masterclass for anybody in marketing or public facing employees. So do pass that round if you know of anybody who'd be interested. And we've just announced our next networking event in Ireland. So that's going to take place on the 8th of September. And we've got 3 guest speakers from ABP, KeyPack and Board Beer. The theme of the day is the challenge of change. And our speakers will be discussing how best to deal with challenges from a personal point of view, but also from a professional point of view as well. So do make sure you go on our website and grab your tickets for that if you'd like to attend. So I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll introduce Soraya. So like I said, today we've got we're delighted to have Soraya with us for a session on building mental resilience. Within 4 years of leaving a factory floor job at Britvic and at only 31 years old, Soraya became the youngest and only female director for Smithfield Foods UK, having gone through some very difficult times. She's currently studying a master's in supply chain management whilst working full-time and being a mum. I'm sure you'll agree that Soraya sounds like an absolute superhero. So I'm going to hand over to you now. And I know we've got a lot to get through. If you've got any questions, we'll make some time for those at the end. So do pop them in the chat along the way. And a huge thank you to Soraya, and I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Rebecca. So good morning, everyone. I will start to share my screen with you, and apologies because my tech assistant is next door, and so hopefully you can start to see once I get this sorted. So if everyone can see that screen, I hope.
Yeah.
I'll look over my cameras there for you guys. Morning everyone, and welcome to my kind of session of building mental resilience. Now also good evening to those that are across the globe. First of all, before I go into a bit of an intro on myself, I want to ask you guys, how many of you have been in a situation where you felt, oh, I need to say that, but I daren't say it, or you have this thought in your mind in a meeting and you want to ask a question and you don't, but then someone else does it for you and you think, oh, I should have asked that question. And this is kind of things I'm going to touch on today, is about the resilience within your mind to be able to push yourself forward, no matter what situation you're in. And I'm giving you an example of a meeting where it may not be as difficult, but it's all part of mental resilience. It's all part of, I know I could have said something, I know I could have done something different, but why didn't I? And kind of getting past that point of fearing the worst that would happen. So I'm going to take you through a few bits about myself, and my goal is to have just one of you sit there and think, do you know what, next time I'm going to speak up, next time I'm going to go for that job, and I'm going to go for something different, because you will get it. You will, believe me. Resilience will lead to success, and that's where I'm going to draw on a few personal experiences, and hopefully I ignite something within at least one of you that thinks, do you know what, I'm going to apply for that job because I know that I can do it. So I will do my best to time check myself. As Rebecca already mentioned, if you've got any questions, please do pop them in the chat, and we'll break before the end, and I'll be able to answer as many as I can for you. So if I just start a little bit of what you will hopefully discover today. So I break mine down with 5 different pillars. I always look at what is the level of resilience that you have. Now, everyone has some level. You're all here today, you're all present, so you have got resilience because you've shown up. So I'm going to look at what is your current level, how do we build on that? Then what I'm going to look at is using your key and core values to fuel your drive to build that resilience and to achieve whatever you want to achieve. Now, you'll see mine was quite obvious, but I didn't know it until a kind of a turning moment in my life, and I will go on to that a little bit later. I say tricks on letting go. Now, they're more like habits of letting go, but it's little things that I've learned over the years that have allowed me to build my resilience to a higher level and then to move on with things. It's not an overnight thing. Real resilience isn't. It is no magic pill. To not let that comment affect you and not let what someone did to you impact your thought processes and your next moves. But over time, you become better. So it doesn't become easier, you do become better at it. So it feels easier. So we'll go into something that I learned a few years ago, which has helped me out a lot. We're going to touch on overcoming fight, flight, or freeze. I think everyone's heard of that before, and we've all been there. My first ever board meeting, I was terrified. So I'm going to give you a few little pointers and stuff that I've done and I've learned from others to help me within the moment. And then resetting yourself. So this is a key thing for me, whether you are looking at resetting a moment where you need to keep going, whether again it's in a meeting or a job interview, or resetting something in your personal life that is holding you back, and we'll go through that. So ideally, this is what I'd like you guys to discover from my session. So I will go for my next part of why me. And this story is, I always look at this story and go, it's not really anything special, really, is it? But when I tell people, people are quite astonished. So I'm going to kind of go through it, and you can make your own judgment in me, I guess, and you can understand maybe why I'm here. And then hopefully in one of the next masterclasses, it will be one of you guys showing us your skill or your deep down kind of core value that you work on, and we can learn something from you. So my childhood was a good one. I am the youngest of 3, and I'm the only girl. So, and I'm pretty sure my parents wanted the girl, but they got the tomboy, which, I think I did better that way, and I was happy with it. I grew up, and it was the kind of the standard mix of a culture though, but of my dad is Iranian, but he's half Iranian, half German. My mum is English, but she's half English, half German. My grandmother has Italian, there's Polish, there's every culture you can think of. And it was fantastic because we celebrated every good event of that. And I grew up always saying, I never wanted to listen to my parents. I'll do whatever I want to do. I'll go out and I'll, injure myself playing football, and I'll do this stuff and not listen. And that's where I think I've always been a little bit different, because I want to be me. I don't want to be anyone else. And I think when my parents realized that I probably had a bit more drive than what they probably thought, or maybe sometimes could handle in my rebellious side, they were very encouraging in, you do what you want to do, you know. And here's a bit of my not sob story, but a bit of a enlightenment for you. I got married when I was quite young. I married a guy who was 10 years older than me, and I was infatuated because I was young. It was my first proper boyfriend. He was older, and unfortunately for me, that relationship was quite abusive. And in the end, once I had my son, my son was diagnosed about 8 months old, that he had cerebral palsy. So for those that don't know, it's kind of a neurological condition that affects physical movement. So he's fully wheelchair bound. And that's kind of where I then didn't want to have that life anymore for me or my son. And when that abuse became again, when my son was born, that was the end for me. I made that turning point in my life where I said, enough is enough. I'm going to do something more for my son. I'm going to do something more for me. And I couldn't rely on that person that was around me. So I took a big decision, and I remember the moment very clearly still to this day. And that's where I think I built most of my resilience to life. I was almost at the bottom, and there was only one decision for me. It was either do better and be better, or that's it. And that wasn't it for me. I knew there was something more. So we moved on. And like I said, I had a very frank chat with some people close to me and said, this is what I want to do. And with their support, and I will build on networking in a bit, I was there and I moved forward and became, obviously, as we've already touched on, the youngest and first female director at Smithfield Foods at 31. I'm still the youngest appointment, and still the only female, so we're still going. But what I was able to build on as my life went on, and again through a very difficult period, was I met some fantastic people. My current partner, who's currently also my tech guru, who set this up for me this morning, he's been fantastic. And now I know that I've got this really great, strong network, but I have had to make decisions in not having certain people around me as my life has gone on, because that's that negative impact. So I think that's enough about me. And I will move on to my bits, and I'll draw on some more personal situations as we go, so I can give you live examples of how I use my resilience in that. So your level of resilience. Now, resilience is not about being positive. Let me just get that clear. It is about working around things that get in your way. So I'm going to laugh because I can see there are some names on this seminar who I work with. They know I'm not always the most positive, but I will always come with a solution. I won't be defensive or resist them in what they need from me, but I will come with a solution as best as I can. But I might not be the happy-go-lucky every time, but I'm there and I'm constantly going. And this is the thing you've got to realize. To keep going forward, you don't always have to be at the happiest you're always going to be. It's about keep going, because success comes from that discipline of moving forward and going. And a few key points here that I wanted to just touch on. I love the sayings, planes take off against the wind, not with it. Mountains do not rise without earthquakes. And we all know the lovely saying of diamonds, because we love diamonds. They are formed under intense pressure. And this is what I want you guys to understand, is having this pressure on you sometimes and being able to kind of manage it as much as you can. Something great will come of it. It will, because it's a growth that is coming. And the same as if you're in the gym every day and you're doing exercises and muscles, your muscles hurt afterwards because they're growing, and that's the pain. If you don't feel your muscles ache afterwards, you're probably not going to grow your muscle, and you're not going to become that super fit person. And it's the same as you in your mind. Your mind is the most powerful muscle you've got. Things can be difficult, but take it as a growth. Don't take it as a negative. And I wanted to touch on a key thing for myself. And okay, yes, this is a tough one, because sometimes, unfortunately, you have to look at the people around you and say, are you bringing me the correct amount of support and positivity that I need for what I want to do in my life? Because at the end of the day, and I am a parent, I've got parents, you know, but we are there for ourselves at the end of it. We have to think, is this what I want with my life? Am I hanging out with the right people? Are they on the same path as me, or are they pulling me backwards? And it's a funny thing to think that you can have friends, for example, where if you were on a weight loss or a diet program and you lost loads of weight, you could have strangers come up to you and say, wow, you look amazing, I haven't seen you in a year, look how well you've done. Yet you can have some people who are very, very close to you and say, oh, I think you're doing too much there, I think maybe you need to be a bit careful, you should really not be that thin. And it always fascinates me that that's the case. And what you've got to understand is that some people closest to you, actually, they love you, they care for you, but they might not see what you can see, and they might not be on the same path as you. And that's what you've got to understand. You are the average of the 5 closest people around you, and that's what you've got to think, have I got the right 5 people around me? So that links on a little bit to fixed mindset and growth mindset. So I say this tongue in cheek, everything is your fault. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you can become great. Now, what I'm saying is, it's not that it's your fault. So I'm going to do it with a personal experience here. It's not my fault that my husband would have hit me, for example, okay? But in a form, I allowed that to happen. He overpowered my strength in that moment, and I never allowed that to ever happen again, through choice and through realizing that I'm worth so much more. And that was a massive build and resilience level for me. It took a long time, it took years, but I got there in the end. And this is, now I accept now that I've allowed certain things to happen to me and they've impacted me, but I've allowed that. It was my choice to react that way. And now I will not let that happen again. And I will choose to be different. And then that choice is your resilience there. So that's kind of my mindset thing that I will go into a bit later. And I'll explain to you how you can kind of build on your resilience levels of my tricks a bit later on. And another thing that I think I had to put this quote in, because I would say this was probably me after I had my son. You know, everything up to the birth of my son was perfect. There was no health issues, there was nothing. And during labor, something went wrong at the hospital. And unfortunately, he then had brain damage. So the resilience there is accepting your new reality, right? It can be less good than what you thought it was going to be. You can fight it, you can scream about it, whatever you want to do, but you're going to have to accept it and put something together that's good. Or in my case, and hopefully in a lot of your cases, once you've accepted it, you can put together something that's even better than what you've got right now. And you can, because it is possible. And if anyone can show you that, hopefully my story can show you that you can do it, and you really can. And some of the people I've met in this play, you know, in Meet Business Women, at the conferences, there is so much spark and ambition in some of you. It's fantastic to see. And I would love to watch, as the years go on, people presenting this back to me. And I enjoy the masterclasses. So hopefully you guys can take something from this one as well. So here's 2 of my almost favorite sayings here. So between stimulus and response is the power of choice. So goes on to my choice or your choices in situations. So let's go with, you're in a meeting, your boss says something that's perhaps deemed as, you know, offensive, a bit of bullying. You have the power of choice there. Now, I've been in situations, in businesses, in meetings, only female, still happens to this day. Actually, I was at a dinner the other week and I was the only female and there was 19 males. And it was my choice how I wished to present myself. Now, I could have been a little bit involved in the male bravado conversation, or I kept to my professional kind of advocating of females in our industry. and stayed how I was, calm and collective, and didn't respond to anything that I heard on the side of me that wasn't necessarily the best discussions that I could hear. So let's say you're in a meeting with your boss and they say something that you may not necessarily agree with. You have the choice of how you respond to that. And that's what everyone needs to understand. You can take a moment, you can pause, but it is your choice. You can respond in a positive way. You can choose and understand that that comment reflects more on them than it does you, and that you are a powerful person and that you have control over your own emotions. So the other saying that I have, which I can probably relate to most things, whether work or personal, is that you can dance in the rain or you can sulk in the rain. It's going to rain regardless. So again, this is to do with acceptance in building that resilience. If you can accept the things out of your influence, out of your circle of influence, and you can accept it and carry on no matter what, you can achieve some fantastic career path, fantastic personal life. You could meet the person that you're supposed to be with, you can get the job that you wanted. And I never even had director on my goals. My goal was to be a supply chain manager by the time I was 40. That was my goal in my diary, written down. And yet I went for it because I thought, what was the worst that was going to happen? They were going to say no. Like I say to my team, what's the worst that's going to happen? It's only chicken, it's only pork. Nothing's going to happen that's worse than that, So go for it, because I've got a saying a bit later, but regret is a lot heavier weight to hold than anything else. So, and we'll touch on that in a bit as well, but I just like these sayings. There was another saying I actually really like, and I say to my team a lot: never let your emotions overpower your intelligence. Now, we are very, very intelligent people. We have it in us. We're all in an industry that's male dominated. We all have had those moments, I'm sure, where we've gone, should I really be here? And I've sat at the board table thinking, should I be here? Imposter syndrome, that pull of is that right? And you know what? Yes, we should, because we've already made the step. We've already got the job. We've got to keep going for the next one. And we deserve to be where we are right now as much as anyone else does. So I always like to give my team sayings, and I think, I'm not sure if they enjoy it sometimes when I ping out little quotations and pictures, but they get them anyway. So, so I think the best way, in all honesty, to build your resilience is to understand what is your key value. Now, value is difficult because value could be, I value money. I value my time. I value my family. Some people value kind of superficial things that I think you really have to think about. What is your value? Because as soon as you know what it is and why you're doing what you're doing, there is literally no going back ever. And sometimes it takes a little while. And I would recommend, in all honesty, to sit in a quiet room with a notebook and pen and write down the things of what made you start this path, what made you think. And if it is money, fantastic. We all start with that. If it is the fact that you wanted to show that you could do this against, the odds of people, fantastic. Again, go for it, because it will drive you to something that you never thought was possible, ever. And my why is very easy, but it took me a while, because I like fast cars. I like handbags, a lot of handbags that I don't actually use. I like trainers. And I was very distracted by that. Obviously, when I realized that I had to do something more for my son, because I realized I would be probably caring for him a lot longer than what most people would care for a child, I realized that my why was my son. And this is Gabriel. And this is him laughing at me when I was doing a bleep test for the police, because I actually did volunteer for the police for 5 years within my career as well. And this was him laughing while I was trying to do a bleep test. So thanks Gabriel, but kept me going, and I kept running. And I was a special constable for 5 years whilst I was at Britvic Soft Drinks, and then whilst I was also at Kerry Foods, whilst I was a planning manager there. And I loved it, absolutely loved it, and it gave something back. And that was a really good way of boosting a bit of self-confidence and discipline as well. So my key here is, as soon as you find out your value and your why, nothing that is thrown at you will impact your mental resilience, because all you have to say to yourself in that moment is, I know why I'm doing this. Whatever you've said to me, whatever you've done to me is a reflection on you, not me. I know why I'm doing this, and I'm going to keep going. So try and figure that out, but take the time to figure it out, because it doesn't always come that quickly. So I'm going to leave you with this. I'm going to leave you for a moment with this, because the power of pause is, if you really want to do something, you will find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse. And that is a key phrase that I think is quite powerful. And I want you guys just to think, if this is what you really want, this is something you will find a way to do it, no matter what is thrown at you, no matter the swear words. I've had a manager, in all honesty, come to my face and tell me that he was going to spark me out, which was a fantastic experience in life. Clearly he, had something going on, and I've let that go, in my sense, because again, all he's done is he's built me to be a stronger person. That interaction's made me stronger, because I'm still here, I'm still going, and it doesn't deter me from anything. Because again, what's the worst is going to happen? So my trick, so this is one of my tricks anyway, and this is something I think can be used, and I've used this for not only an interaction at work with someone, and which has kind of made me quite upset, and I felt like, why am I doing this, what have I done wrong type thing, to actually I've used this over a lot longer period in letting go of my past marriage. So the idea is that you take the situation that's impacted you, it's hurt you mentally or hurt you physically even, and it could be anything that is holding you back at the minute, because you're thinking about it still, which means it's holding you back. Okay, so you imagine yourself, you're in a courtroom scenario, you've got Judge Judy there. I thought it was a great picture. And the person that has offended you or has caused you harm or impacted you, so that could be your boss, that could be a colleague, that could be a partner, that could be a friend. They are the person standing in the dock, and they are the person that's on trial, basically. You are the prosecutor in your mind. And I would encourage you to do this in a quiet room, so it's just you guys, and you're thinking this through, and you're actually picturing it in your mind. So they're on the dock, they're accused of the crime. Now, my person was accused of, I felt, unfairly kind of commenting on something that I did. And that was, it kind of escalated to a point where it made me feel like, why am I bothering right now? I'm really trying, and nothing seems to be working. But you, as the prosecutor, you have to tell them how it made you feel. You accuse them of the crime that you believe they have committed. So whether that's against you, or made you feel like you weren't worth anything in that meeting, or made you feel like, the next job that you wanted, and they said you're not potentially eligible for it, and they've made you feel like, well, I feel a bit rubbish now. So that's what you're discussing. You're explaining everything, how you feel, how they've made you feel. And you imagine then that you are truly in their shoes, not how would you have reacted, but you have to physically think, what was that person going through at the time to say that to me? What is going on in their life to say that to me? Because I think we don't do this enough to understand, what is that person going through. Now, the idea there is to understand that actually it probably wasn't anything against you. It was something that was in their life that was impacting them, and they reacted in that way. And that's the part of the process for you to show a slight empathy, but to be able to then move on from it. So what you do after you've imagined that you're actually physically them in their life, their day-to-day, and how they reacted to you, and how would you have reacted if, for example, you were not a mum of one, but you were a mum of three with no partner, and kind of trying to remember what their situation is. You give them a ruling. So you say, right, you know what, you can say it was unacceptable. I'm not happy with how you made me feel. No matter what was going on in your personal life, you shouldn't have done that. And you do a sentence in your mind and you say, this is it. I'm sentencing you to, I don't know, you can make it up if you want to. I make up some silly things in my head, but I'm going to sentence you to 30 days of, that's it, I'm not talking to you anymore, and I'm going to move on. But the whole point of it is to move on. So what you have to visualize at the end of this is that they come off the dock, you come away from the prosecution bench, because I like to imagine it, but you have to you have to hug them, but you have to be happy that you've hugged them. And it's difficult, and believe me, it is really difficult, especially when you feel that person has impacted or offended you. But you have to do it until you can just accept that hug, and then that's it, you move on. So you don't allow what they did to you to affect you again. And I've had to repeat this for months, and I mean months, on certain situations in my life. Some things I do this once and I'm done, and I go, great, now we're out of the courtroom, let's go back to it. Okay. But it took me 18 months to get over the stuff that happened to me in the past from my marriage. And I used this trick, and I would do it at least once or twice a week. It took me 18 months to then, whilst in a new relationship, to allow my barriers to go down a bit more with my current relationship. And this is why I want you guys to know, the stuff in the past should stay in the past, but it's so hard, because if you're holding that past, impact and hurt, your resilience levels will be poor. They will. You won't be able to deal with the little things that impact you. And a lot of the stuff is little. And this is where these little tricks will help you, because you can't hold on to the small stuff and become great. You have to realize you can deal with it. You can sentence them. You can do your ruling. You can be the judge, but let it go and move on, because then your resilience is higher because you have less impacting it. And I'd really like you guys to give this a go. And I'd actually really like to hear, if anyone does give it a go, how did they feel afterwards, and what did they think? And I mean, hopefully you guys can find me on anything at one of the next conferences. You can find me on like Instagram and stuff. Please do message me and tell me what you think of this, because I genuinely swear by it. I think it's great. So that's my tricks on the letting go thing. And what my next bit is linked to it is the overcoming the fight, flight, or freeze. Now, we've all heard it. We've all had it. My first ever day at Smithfield Foods, I was in a board meeting. I've never been in a board meeting before. I'd never had free lunch before. And I generally didn't know what on earth was going on. I was the biggest imposter in the room in my head. And I was waiting and waiting for my boss to say, I'm sorry, but we made the wrong decision here. Can you please go, and we'll go back to the drawing board. 4.5 years later, he's still not had that conversation with me. So I think we're doing okay. But it's something that you guys, you're going to feel it. You're never going to be cured from it, in all honesty. But like I said previous, it doesn't get easier. You get better. You get better at dealing with it. You get better at managing how you feel. Now, with this, I have a few things that I try to do, and it's everything from a physical change in what I'm doing in the moment. So anything simple, tricks that I'm going to say, if you can see my watch, I've got a watch, and my watch will either be spun round to the other side so that my body can feel that the watch is slightly different, to going onto my other wrist, to a hairband going from one wrist to the other, to overcome in that moment when I feel slight overwhelm. And I cannot advocate more for being able to have something that you can change. because your mind is then shown something different. So the fight, flight, or freeze is stimulated by fear, and it's stimulated from the unknown of what's going to happen next. And my thought here is that it is chemical. It's your amygdala in your brain stimulating something that says, oh my God, what's going to happen next? And the best way to overcome this over time is to have a change so your mind resets itself in a form, but to also actually say to yourself in your mind, what is the worst that's going to happen? What's the worst that's going to happen? And at the end of the day, what is the worst that's going to happen? I have had a job where I've walked out because I just couldn't do it anymore. And I found a new job straight away. I've had jobs where we've come to an agreement and I've gone, and I found a job straight away. It's because I haven't given up. I've applied for places and gone constantly. But what is the worst that's going to happen? And okay, what's the worst going to happen in that friendship when they're challenging you and you don't feel like it's a great thing and you want to kind of fight? Don't fight them. Make your point. You can explain your emotions, but don't show them, and make your point of, this is how it's impacted me. This is how I feel. And then what you need to look at is, how do I control those moments? So in that board meeting, in that presentation on stage, how do I overcome my, nervousness around something? And there are all these different tricks of, for me personally as well, with other than the watch, I used to have my hand under the table. Sounds a bit silly. Hand on the table, and I used to pull at the skin that was on my knuckle, because that stimulated my mind to think of something different than the moment I was in. And as time went on, I learned that when I would say the thing I wanted to say, nothing bad really happened. And so the next time this came up, I would have it in my mind that, again, what's the worst that's going to happen? I have every right to say to someone, give me a moment, I'll come back to you, I'll speak to you in a bit. And if you can control, again, your emotional response to this by every trick you can think of, you can touch your leg, you can tapping on your legs is another technique for stopping fight, flight, or freeze, because it's a stimulus in the mind. By you tapping somewhere on your body that maybe no one can see, it starts to build a different chemical response and a different pathway. And this is the key here. We all have it. It's about how can we overcome and control it. And you have to find your technique. Now, like I said, mine is a watch. I copied that, by the way, from a commercial director at Smithfield. Fantastic advice there. Hairbands, tapping is a good way. And also speaking to yourself, in your mind, resetting the breathing technique. And I will look at later on a little bit, I've got a recommendation for a book, and it's the Mel Robbins, the 5-second rule. Just breathe in and breathing out, and holding that, because you don't have to be rushed in your response. You don't have to feel like every moment needs to be filled. And this is the key of overcoming fight, flight, or freeze. And again, it doesn't get easier. Remember this, you get better at it, and then it feels easier. And that's through practice and practice. And this is where I think my kind of last slide is next. No, my next one after that. But it's a key discipline that you have to practice. And that's what leads to success. So I'm time checking myself. So I'm going to rattle through the next two. This is the last pillar for me, resetting yourself. Now, you have to allow time to reset yourself. You have to. And whether that's the 20-minute car journey from the office back home, or the 20-minute, 30-minute walking your dog, or even just the moment where the kids have gone to school finally, and then you've got a couple minutes to make your coffee and crack on, you have to have this time. And it's difficult, believe me. So for me and my, I say husband, future husband, we almost juggle each other's lives of, right, who's doing what now, who's doing this, whose turn is it to do this? And but we allow it for each other because we understand how important it is. So the acceptance allows you to reset. Okay. Acceptance does. It happened, and I was being careful what I say here. It was rubbish what happened. Okay. But I have to accept it. It happened to me, and it allows me to say, happened to me, I'm never going to let that happen to me again. I'll never not speak up again. I'll never not go for that job again. I'll never do that. I'm resetting myself to be a new me. Okay. Changing something physical, we've already spoken about in regards to physical, watch or a hairband. Now that's a reset in a moment. This is something that it's not necessarily going to help you in the long run of, I've had to reset myself because, I didn't get that job and I didn't get that, or, someone in my personal life's been really, really bad towards me. This is in a physical moment reset, because it allows your mind to quickly switch and think of something different and away from that thing that's stimulating you at that moment. Now, the power of pause is fantastic. So Mel Robbins, I mentioned her earlier, her book is really good. You should definitely listen to it. But the power of pause from a moment to weeks, and I'm saying this in regards to, you might have to pause on that person for a few weeks, because that's what you might need. It might be just something that helps you. Pausing yourself in a meeting and saying to someone, I just need a moment, is a valid thing to do. Okay. So the power of pause is great. Listen to that book, please. And, don't be afraid to say, I just need a moment. I need to think about this, or I just need a moment. Go for the walk at lunchtime, walk around your desk, do what I do, and walk off to the next floor downstairs and come back up again. And believe me, it completely changes. Or just go and get a drink and use that. The rest. Now, rest. I have a view on rest. And I think my husband will laugh as well because of Netflix, but we won't go down that road. But rest, and do not make rest an objective, make it a necessity, because the longer you rest as a necessity, the more you're going to dwell on the things that have impacted you. And the longer you leave it, the harder it is to move forward in that resilience level. So if you have an issue with something, take the moment to reset yourself and rest from it, but don't then sit and dwell on it, because it becomes harder. The longer you leave something, the harder it becomes to deal with that situation. So, key example for me, I had quite a difficult conversation previous where I had messed up at work on something that I had presented. I felt awful about it, absolutely awful. I was like beating myself up about it. And rather than sitting there and dwelling, I decided that I couldn't make myself feel this bad anymore. I went face on, I knocked on the MD's door, went straight in and said, look, I've messed up here. I need you to be honest with me. What is your feedback in what I've just done? Because I'm beating myself up enough. I don't feel like I want to sit here and know whether or not you're going to kind of give me that same feedback. So I reset myself to the point where I knew I wasn't going to like burst into tears about it. I wasn't going to go in there and kind of, allow my emotions to overpower me. But I went in and asked for the feedback, and it was absolutely fine. He said, we're only human. Everyone makes mistakes. He said, I can't ever say anything bad to you for the amount of stuff you do. And he said, and the fact you've come in here to ask me for some feedback is great. So make it an objective, not a necessity. I'm definitely time checking myself now, Sam. I'll be really quick here. Reset your day. So go back to the beginning if you can, if you have to. And that even includes if you're at that point of anxiety levels are really, really high, you just don't want to face it. You can't. I have a trick of going back to setting my alarm off and going back into the shower and starting my day again, because that allows me to start again, and I'm going to start afresh. And a shower is a really powerful thing of almost feeling like you've cleaned and reset yourself, which is strange, but it's true. And a nice saying I like to say to people is be prepared. So take the umbrella. If you choose not to, be happy with the odd soaking. So be prepared. And if you choose to not be prepared, then be comfortable with the potential outcome. So prep yourself for that meeting, prep yourself for that presentation, run the scenarios through your head. And then no matter what comes back at you, you don't have any anxiety or issue with it. It doesn't impact you mentally or impact your resilience levels because you're prepared. You've already got it. So take that kind of imaginary umbrella, or the real one if you're going out, obviously, and don't want to get soaked. Now, this is my last slide, so I'm going to show you guys discipline, and I'll rattle through it, and then we'll go for questions, and hopefully we'll have a few. So a couple of key sayings here, and this discipline will bring you success, will bring you the resilience levels you need to have success in your life. Now, discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. It just is. It is key to anything in life. And I'm not going to go too much into all of these sayings, but one of my favorite people to listen to on Audible, so definitely do it, is Jim Rohn. And I have put his thing on the next slide, and I've given you guys the 4 key books that I would read or audibles I would listen to. We all must suffer from one of 2 pains, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The difference is discipline weighs ounces whilst regret weighs tons. Now, that's the thing. And my question to you earlier was about how many of you have sat somewhere and said, you know, I wish I would have said that. Oh, I should have said that, but you know, John said that in the meeting and everyone went, oh, great idea, John. But that was in my head 2 minutes before he did. There's your weight of regret. You know, nothing bad was going to happen. What's the worst that's going to happen there? And again, like I said to my team, what's the worst that's going to happen? It's only chicken. So don't regret things. Just go for it, honestly, because what is the worst that's going to happen? Master the art of time management. And that is a key thing in discipline, of not allowing others, linking back to your 5 closest people, not allowing yourself to be overwhelmed and almost drained by people who have this kind of negative pull on you, who aren't on the same path as you. And yes, believe me, it's sad when you lose a friend that you got on really well with, but they were just pulling you in the wrong direction. And I'm not saying that you have to lose friends, by the way. What I'm saying is you have to choose what you want from those people and what they want from you. And if you really want this key focus on this path, you will find people. They are very small percentage, unfortunately, but you will find people just like you who want to achieve just what you want to achieve, and they have the same mindset and the same growth, and they are happy to be your support cheerleader network. And I'm lucky enough to have a few fantastic people around me who do that, but I have lost a good chunk of people that I used to hang out with. And I look back, being 35, and looking at where they are, and they're still where they were 15 years ago, and I am where I am, and I'm happy with what I've decided to do in my life. And this is my key bit I want to just say to you guys, and I will skip the lack of discipline, but you obviously will have read it. So for a newborn baby, how long should a baby try to learn how to walk? How long would you give the average baby before you say, right, enough, no more, you're not trying anymore, we're done? Any mother would say that you were crazy. My baby is going to try until they learn, right? And this is what we forget when we get older. So you will try until you get there, until you learn to walk, until you get that job, until you smash that presentation. You will keep going. And my question to you guys is, how long until you try? And the answer is until, because you will get there. And resistance, resilience, building on that with tricks and understanding what the worst, nothing bad will happen. Keep going, keep resetting yourself. Reset yourself 20 times a day if you need to. Just don't stop, because you wouldn't have stopped when you learned to walk. You wouldn't have stopped when you learned to ride a bike. You wouldn't have stopped when you learned to read and write and do maths. Why do we stop as adults? Why? Because we feel like, oh, I've tried hard enough now. But if you just keep going, and I went through a very difficult time of my career. I went from Britvic, a fantastic place to work, to places where I felt uncomfortable. I was threatened by men in different ways, and I was pushed to the point where I walked out of one job, but I kept going and I kept applying for jobs, and I actually got this job at Smithfield from sitting in a job I was in consulting, thinking, this isn't me, I don't want to do this anymore, this isn't me. And I wrote a letter, and it makes me laugh because I remember the day I sat and wrote letters, handwritten letters in 2018 to a number of different companies in my area with my CV. I explained my current situation. I explained what I'd like to see in the future, what I'd like to do, and that if they ever had anything going, let me know. And funnily enough, I got this thing back from the MD of Smithfield who said, we've got a job going. It's a director. Would you be interested? And I was 31 and I thought, you're having a laugh, aren't you? Sat in my parents' kitchen and went, don't think this will ever happen. Look at this, what they're offering and all this. And I went, do you know what? What's the worst going to happen? They're only going to say no. And I went for it. And I was 15 years younger than every other person. And I was the only female. And here I am 4.5 years later, absolutely loving the industry that I work in, loving the people I work with, and especially my boss who I work for, my commercial director, who's now my mentor. And I've got some fantastic people around me, including women who I've met through the Meet Business Women and through all the networking events. And, I couldn't be happier. I couldn't. And I'll give you my last book club. I said this, 4 books I would recommend you either read or listen to on Audible. Jim Rohn is one of the funniest guys I listen to. I love his accent. I think he's from Texas or Missouri or somewhere, and he's fantastic. But he is publicly speaking about mindset, discipline, growth mindset in like the 60s and 70s, and nothing has changed. And he talks about success, and it's fantastic. That's my favorite out of the 4. So if you could listen to these, please do. If you can read them, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is a fantastic model on you, and it will help build your resilience in a form to help you move forward. So that is it from me. I felt like I've gone slightly too far over, and I'm looking at Sam and she's shaking her head, so we're all good. So what I'll do is I will stop sharing, and I'll go back to hopefully Sam or Rebecca. But thank you all for listening to me.
That was amazing. Thanks so much, Soraya. I think everybody's back on screen now. Honestly, so much of that, I'm sure that so much of that resonated with everybody. I was just sat there transfixed. It was brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. If anybody has any questions, I don't think there's been any popped into the chat just yet, but please do fire them over. Now's your chance. There was a couple that came in when people registered, because we do ask people if they'd like to ask a question when they register for these. So I'll fire the first one at you if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
So one that stood out to me was, how do you navigate emotional reactions to stressful situations when men in the team may see you as being overreacting or unreasonable?
So I could give you 2 answers really. So for those that know me, I'm quite jovial in the sense of I like to joke a little bit. So for a man to think that I'm overreacting, I would say then to him, my response would be, I'm passionate and you're not passionate enough in what I do. Now, I've had men who have told me to have a stiff upper lip was the saying. And I have found that quite difficult at times to think, okay, at the time then I thought he was right. And a trick that I used to do was the hand under the table. So if I felt myself getting overwhelmed, I would touch like my leg, or I'd poke my leg to go, my mind's now thinking about that. So my mind's not going to think about me crying, and my mind's not going to be overwhelmed, because I'm one of those lovely women who cries when they're angry and not, get angry. So it is difficult, and I'm not going to deny that it isn't difficult at times. But I found ways to control in the kind of management of touching other parts of my leg, my knuckles, my hands, and counting in my mind forwards and backwards. But what I've come to learn as I've got a little bit older, and a little bit more, a fixture around the board table, sometimes I allow my emotion to come out slightly. I control it better, but there is nothing wrong with me being a little bit more passionate. And then if I ever get, which I haven't in my current role, by the way, because the men are fantastic around, but if I ever got the challenge of, oh, you're being a bit too emotional, I would be saying, I'm not over emotional here. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to express to you my concern of this situation. I am passionate about what I do. Now, if you go on a family setting, my family probably do think I'm quite passionate and, let it all out. But you should never, in my view, if you're working in a place, you have to apologize for being passionate about your job and caring about it. That's a difficult place to be. So try the techniques of, counting back and forth. So taking a moment, and do not have that fear of saying, do you know what, I just need a moment. Because yes, you're right, men can control that outward emotion better than we can, but we have so much more where our intelligence can come out and we can explain it much better. And I think use your words and definitely use the counting back and forth in your mind, because it will distract you from that moment of stimulus of trying to be upset about it. Hope that answers that question.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope that's it. I hope that's answered it for the lady who asked. There's another one just popped through on the chat. Any tips for managing criticism, constructive feedback from colleagues and clients?
Definitely, because I think you have to have in your mind, again, and people from Smithfield will get this, it's only feedback. So that's their perception of what you're presenting, okay? What you have to get in your mind and try to understand is everyone has a different perception on things. Now, if it's constructive feedback, or if it's feedback in general, if you have a fixed mindset, you will think, well, that's just horrible. I'm a victim to this. That's not nice. If you try and go into it with a growth mindset and think, okay, your point is noted. I don't agree. I also don't disagree. Your point is noted in your mind. That person, you might never see them again. They might not be anything to you in 4 years' time. And that's where I always think, okay, your point is noted. Thank you very much. Do I agree? Do I disagree? I'll think about that later. But also, I then ask myself, who is this person to me personally? And how would I then deal with them professionally going forward? If it was, say, a customer, I would think, okay, now I understand that that person could give me that type of feedback. So next time I speak to them, I will be prepared for the worst comment, and I will make sure it will not impact me mentally. And I'll take that moment before that meeting to go in. And it is hard to let things go, but do the judge technique on that one afterwards. Do the judge one, and I guarantee you next time you'll be way more prepared when they come in and speak to you.
That's great feedback. Thank you. There is one more that's just popped through. When I'm dealing with a situation, I like a period of hippo time, wallowing, like that phrase. And sometimes I think it helps. Other times I think it makes the situation worse. What's your opinion?
So just repeat the last part, sorry, Rebecca, because it broke up for me, if that's okay. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll go from the top for you.
Right.
So when I'm dealing with a situation, I like a period of hippo time or wallowing. And sometimes I think it helps. Other times I think it makes the situation worse. What's your opinion?
In all honesty, I agree that a little bit of, never heard of it termed as hippo time, but cool, I'm going to use that one. It is needed sometimes. I have been in situations where something's happened. I've gone downstairs to the next floor at Smithfield. I phoned my other half, and this is where your network is key. And I have cried to him, and I have gone nuts to him. But he does the same. Well, I say he does the same back to me. He might disagree with you, but that's what you need sometimes. But the point is, don't then try to let it go too far. If that comment is a 30-second comment, try and give it the same amount of time of your time to dwell, and then move on, because they're probably not thinking about that comment again. It's only impacting you. And again, it's something that you can take as feedback, and it can be a growth point, but it's only noted. It's their perception and not yours. how you truly feel about yourself is key, but let it out however you want to let it out. I don't know, sing really loudly to, I don't know, Beyonce. We're gonna go with Beyonce here. Go nuts in the kitchen, you know, go for a run if that's what your thing is, go to the gym, think about it, but definitely do your best to close it, because it's only going to hold you back. And in all honesty, what would that comment mean in 3 years' time? It might not mean much.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Soraya. I'm conscious of time. We've gone a minute over 11, so we've stuck to it fairly well. Hopefully, yeah, if there's any more questions, I'm sure that, you know, like Soraya said, do contact her on Instagram and you know, let her know your feedback with the things that she's with things that she's mentioned. But yeah, just thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And like I said, it's really resonated with everyone, I'm sure. So thank you very much. And hopefully we shall see you all on the next masterclass.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.